digital radio, on the app, on your smartphone, on X, YouTube, and Facebook. The Sportscast. Basketball and more.
The update presented by the Sportscast.
Left hook again on the side of the glove. Right hand by Foreman was not effective. The right uppercut did bounce the head a little bit. Punches will not hurt Ali. Ali just takes him. Protecting his face at all times, does Ali. Foreman throwing more punches now. Maybe this could be the tactic of Ali to let the man punch himself out. 30 seconds left in round 8. Very even fight. Ali, a sneaky right hand. Another sneaky right hand. This time he works over the shoulder of Foreman. Three, four, five, six. Foreman gets up to the knee. 8. That's it. The fight is stopped. Muhammad Ali. A dramatic 8-round knockout.
The Rumble in the Jungle. Welcome to the Sportscast, March 26, 2025. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, Facebook, X, and Apple Podcasts. You can also listen to us on your smart speaker. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. We're also on online digital radio. You can visit our website, thesportscast.net. And also, you can look us up on X at the Sportscast1 or IG, the Sportscast1. Also, check out the app, the Sportscast for iOS. In the clip that you saw previous was the famous fight between Muhammad Ali and the late, great George Foreman, who passed away this past weekend. And I couldn't think of anyone to join us to remember him, but my friend Chan Bastow from England, from BTR Boxing. Welcome back to the Sportscast.
Thank you for having me as always, and it's a pleasure to be on the show. But it's just really sad that the show is about George Foreman and his recent passing. I know it's celebrating the life of George Foreman and his legacy, but I still, even a few days later, still feel a little bit, sad about the fact that he's passed away. And it's inevitable, like death comes to us all at some point. We can't escape it. Of course we can't. But I think when you see somebody, as an idol like George Foreman, and not just an idol in the boxing world, but an idol as an entrepreneur, an idol as a preacher, someone that was so multifaceted as a human being, someone that was able to reinvent himself as a human being and create all these multiple moments throughout his life. It is really sad. Like on my podcast just recently, we was talking about, like, it feels very much like the end of that era. Like the golden era of the heavyweight division seems to be nearly at a complete end. I think Larry Holmes is the only fighter left standing from that golden era of heavyweight legends that's still with us, and he's also not looking the greatest recently in recent videos and photos that I've seen him in. So it just feels really sad to think that we're coming to an end of what is such a great era and what will always be regarded as probably the greatest heavyweight era in boxing history. So to see the news of George passing over the weekend is always also really sad. And this is a man who had probably not one, but 2 Hall of Fame boxing careers. His career up until 1974, 1975. And then, of course, when he came back in the mid to late 80s and went on in 1994 to go on and capture the heavyweight championship of the world for a second time against Michael Moorer. These are just moments that live on in history. And one of the conversations I was having with my good friend Lukey on my podcast was about how people know George Foreman. So, like, people don't just know George Foreman through being the boxer. People actually find George Foreman through selling the lean, mean, fat grilling machines, or George Foreman, the commentator on HBO for many years. So everybody that knows of George Foreman has kind of had an introduction to him in a specific way, which I also found quite compelling to really think about as well. What was your perception, Santiago, of George Foreman as a figure and as a personality within not just boxing but in business and in general?
Yeah, that's something that you bring up about like the business part. Throughout the weekend, I was listening to clips and listening to other specials, and besides the sport, he was really known for his business, and I forget about that part of his life and of his career. His Foreman grill was huge. I mean, we're talking about he probably made millions and millions of bucks. And I think, there was one boxer I actually was listening to. I can't remember his name. It might have been Anthony Joshua. I don't remember, but he said that not only that I look up to him as an athlete, but also as an entrepreneur, as a business person. And I think he'll be remembered, obviously, first for the sport, but not just that, but also his business, which is hard to do, John. Both, athletes, sometimes they're just known for that. You know, we can say that probably once that day will come when Michael Jordan dies, they'll probably remember him as an entrepreneur that made that deal with Nike and made so much money with his shoe. But I think besides Michael, I think George Foreman is up there. And also, like one thing I really noticed, he was the connection between Muhammad Ali and to like Mike Tyson, wasn't he? Oh no, to like Evander Holyfield and that new generation, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was because obviously, like I said, he retired initially. I think, and people will probably correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was around.
77, he retired.
Oh, I've got yeah, I was going to say 77. He retired, and he had this moment in the changing rooms where he had this sort of spiritual awakening. And we did a career profile on George a couple of years ago for our Career Profiles podcast, and when we did the research for that episode, you learn so much more about that individual, more than what you can just read about on the internet. And when you deep dive into his life and his career, the man did so much, and he came from some such hardship as well, such difficulties growing up to get to the position he got to in life. And he goes and wins the Olympic gold in 1968, starts his career, bulldozes his way for everybody, eventually meets Joe Frazier, the current heavyweight champion, destroys Joe Frazier in that fight, and then goes on, of course, to the Rumble in the Jungle, which again, it's an amazing tale. Like, we did a Legendary Nights episode on that, and it was just going back through the whole build up to that and the film that they did about that, when we were kings. And I think that was one of the most amazingly done documentaries. Even to this day, it still stands up to this day. So if you've never seen that documentary, please do go and watch it, because it really gives you a feel for what it was like back in 1974 and how significant that particular fight actually was. But it was the fact that obviously he went in there as a complete favorite to beat Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, by all journalist accounts, was well, they said he was going to get killed in there. That's what one of the journalists said. And the fact that he was able to do what he did, and they became such great friends as a result of that contest that they shared with one another. In later years, it's just amazing to sort of see the relationship that he had and the relationship that he had with other heavyweights like Joe Frazier. And he was just an amazing human being. And I've been in touch with a couple of his family members, his daughter Georgetta and his brother Ron as well. I've spoken to them recently. I spoke to his brother Roy over the weekend, sent my condolences. And Roy recently came out and spoke about his brother and said some really nice stuff and stuff that you might not necessarily know. So it's always good tuning into that stuff as well. But I think the impact he had, like you said, it went from one generation to the next. He brought the end of that golden generation with like the likes of Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, etc. And then you go into the new generation where you have the likes of Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Riddick Bowe. George Foreman was there with them all. He fought Evander Holyfield, he fought Tommy Morrison. These were fighters that were much younger than him, but yet he was able to go in there and really tough it out with these guys, and eventually goes on to beat Michael Moorer in 1994, like I said, in one of the most historic upsets in boxing history. One of the greatest moments in boxing history for me. That was unbelievable. And even listening back to the commentary, and it still sends chills down my spine. Like, I know it sounds really corny and sad, but like when you watch that back again, you just know it's a moment. It's a moment that may never be replicated in the sport again. It's just one of those great moments.
And
But
to
George Foreman
piggyback,
himself, as a human being, go for it, Santiago.
yeah, to piggyback what you said about Muhammad Ali, in one interview which I can't find, but this is like the closest one, this clip that I will present soon, that he looked at him as a brother, not just like as an opponent. But let's see what he says about George.
First of all, what kind of a fighter was he? Was he somebody you respected as a boxer?
When I look back on the Muhammad Ali I knew and fought, I respect him as being brave, the bravest man I've ever gotten into the ring with. I tell people all the time he was too big. When they ask me, do you think he was the best boxer of all time? I said, nope, he's bigger than boxing. To put him the best boxer would be too small for him.
Yeah.
He was a hero.
Yeah. Well, what happened? How did you lose?
Well, I got in the ring with a man not only who didn't, he knew something I didn't know. He knew he could lose. I didn't know I could lose. I kept thinking, I'm going to hit him with this punch anywhere. I'm just going to knock him out. And I kept hitting him, boom. He was like, I'm not going anywhere. I beat him up. I knock him against the ropes. I said, yeah, so what? He said, fight me. He'd just cover up. Finally, he laid on the ropes. And I, like a dope, got tired. And that's the invention of the rope-a-dope.
He wore you out.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. What'd you think about that clip?
Yeah, it's just George Foreman all over. Just very humble, very appreciative, very self-aware of what and who he was and who those people were around him that helped cement what was a fantastic era. And even like clips in later years as well, seeing those things being said. Just yeah, he's just a great guy. He's just such a big loss for the sport and in general, entrepreneurship in general as well. Like, yeah, I can see you put the pictures up there of the Michael Moore victory again. Just huge loss. He achieved so much as a
He came
fighter.
back at the age of 38, Sean. 10 years being retired.
I know, and at 44, become the heavyweight champion of the world. It's just amazing, isn't it? Like when you look back on all this stuff now, I just can't see anybody ever doing this again.
I cannot picture an athlete coming back 10 years not playing the sport, whatever sport it is, boxing, soccer, football, basketball. I don't even think Ronaldo can do it, to be honest. Cristiano Ronaldo. But you've done a lot of documentaries. You dig deeper. How would you rank them in the history of the sport with the Muhammad Ali's?
It's so hard to do a pound for pound list or to do a top 10 heavyweight list. I'm going to say it like outright now. It's one of the most subjective and difficult things to do. Like, if you're going to do a list, you've got to be clear to the audience about what your parameters are of that list. Why are you ranking these people in that list? Is it based on the number of fights, the number of knockouts, the number of accolades they have won in their career? Is it a combination of all of them? Is it the characteristics of the person, the charisma of the person? It's so hard to really get a definitive list because there will always be a detractor that will say, no, that person shouldn't be at that number. If off the top of my head, if I was going to do a pound for pound top 10 heavyweight list, would George Foreman be in it? That's the question you're asking. And yeah, he would. Where I'd put him, I couldn't say, but he would certainly be in that top 10. The impact it's not just about the impact he had, the fact that he won an Olympic gold, the fact he was a 2-time heavyweight champion of the world in 2 different eras completely, at the age he did it at as well in the mid-90s. You've got to take all these factors into consideration. Is he one of the greatest heavyweights of all time? Absolutely. Does he sit in the top 10? Absolutely. Where you put him is it's your own interpretation. Anybody could say he's a top 4, top 5, top 6, whatever. For me, I'm going to be a bit more broader and say he's a top 10 heavyweight fighter of all time, and that's where I would sit him.
I would agree so, and like you were saying, it's very subjective. I know, especially with this sport, it's very subjective. Basketball, you could easily say Michael Jordan, football, maybe Tom Brady, but in this sport, uh, uh, boxing is going to be very tough. But I would definitely put him in the top 10. I'm not an expert at this, but I would definitely put him up there and seeing the clips and seeing Muhammad Ali and going against other their Holyfield. I definitely put him in the top 10. Well, George Foreman has brought us to more boxing news. KSI cancels the fight against Dylan Ennis 8 days before the event. What are your thoughts over this? Obviously, KSI runs he runs Misfits. Your thoughts over this cancellation? Kind of a surprise, but interesting.
Yeah, it is what it is. I think a lot of people that listen to me or listen to me on your show kind of know I'm not the biggest and greatest fan of the whole Misfits genre. I understand what it brings. I understand the business of the sport and why they're doing it. Is it something that I'm disappointed about? Absolutely not. But I also recently have been speaking to a fighter from Australia who has got one hell of a story. I interviewed him recently for our podcast, and he's actually travelled all the way from Australia, and he's currently in Liverpool in England at the moment, sparring with the likes of Darren Till, sparring with the likes of Liam Smith and Josh Taylor as well in Liverpool, because he's been calling out Tommy Fury for quite some time, and then because of this cancellation of this fight, he said he wanted to by Dylan Dennis. He's even shared some sort of inbox exchanges on his social media. He was called Matt Floyd, Matt the Jedi Floyd.
Issues with Sean Bastow for the moment. We're going to play a commercial, and we'll see you guys at the other side. A Chinese startup is shaking up the AI world. DeepSeek. It claims its latest AI models rival or surpass industry leaders in the US at just a fraction of the cost. With training costs under $6 million using NVIDIA's H800 chips, DeepSeek V3 powers an AI assistant that has surpassed ChatGPT as a top free app on Apple's US App Store. DeepSeek's cutting-edge models have impressed even Silicon Valley insiders, and they're up to 50 times cheaper than OpenAI's latest offering. Behind this breakthrough is Liang Wenfeng, co-founder of hedge fund Highflyer. DeepSeek is rewriting the AI rulebook. If you have any questions, please contact us at sleonproductions.com. We got Sean back. You went a little bit haywire. Maybe the internet is behind over there. But yeah, you were saying about the Australian boxer that wants to go up against Dylan Dennis. What's happening there?
Matt Floyd, Matt the Jedi Floyd, 50-0 boxer from Australia. He's got one hell of a story, and I'll briefly tell it because I think it'll be interesting for your listeners to understand who he is. And people will just assume he's an absolute nobody, and I can understand why people would assume that. But actually, this guy Matt Floyd was actually sexually abused as a youngster. He's quite open about that as well. As he grew up, he went down the wrong path. He actually turned into a paedophile hunter. Him and a group of people would go out and find them. They would do naughty things to them, and he ended up getting put in jail for it. And then when he came out of jail, he actually then became a professional boxer. So he has got one hell of a story. He is somebody that, he's really trying to make a name for himself. He's exchanged some messages with Dylan Dennis. It might actually be on that feed there, Santiago, on his Instagram. If you scroll up a little bit, you might be able to see he's posted some of the messages with Dylan Dennis. I think there you go there on the right hand side. There's some messages there. By the looks of it, and just below that one there, if you go down and see them,
yes,
Yeah. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, there's a post there. He's basically calling out Dylan Dennis, saying he wants to replace KSI. He wants to fight with him. Dylan Dennis is basically saying, "I don't know who you are. How have you got into my DMs? You're a nobody." So it's quite interesting. He's just trying to make some noise. He's trying to get himself a fight.
Yeah, and just back to what the KSI said, he was sick. He was couldn't fight, but that's kind of a little bit unusual. There was some undercard uh, fights that were canceled as well. But yeah, like you were, I mean, you're not a fan of the whole Jake Paul thing situation and like KSI getting involved. Have you changed your perspective, or you still with like, hey, this is too entertainment?
I think it's entertainment. Like, WWE classes themselves as sports entertainment and not so much professional wrestling. I'd say that's what Misfits is for boxing. It's more sports entertainment. Whilst it is an actual sport, it's more an entertainment value that they bring to a certain audience and a demographic. The generation of youth that come through. They don't know anything different. Not a lot of them know anything different, and to them, this is like a real big thing because they follow a lot of these guys on social media, on YouTube or Twitch or wherever they follow them. They follow their journeys. So naturally, they want to see whether this person can do well in a boxing ring and whether they can translate what they're saying outside of the ring, inside of the ring. So I can understand why people buy into it. Not personally for me, not really that upset about it being cancelled, if I'm being honest. If Matty Floyd gets in there, maybe I'd take a bit of an interest, Santiago. If he gets in there and actually has a fight with Dylan Dennis, or he gets on this card, I probably would watch because it'd pique my interest, because I legit think he could be somebody that could fight a bigger name in the future.
I'd rather just see those those charity matches at Wembley Stadium that had a couple of weeks ago in up in London. Those are pretty entertainment and also good for a good cause, um, all the news: Canelo, who turned down Jake Paul, apparently is going up against William School. The fight would be in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. His May 3rd. Sean, your thoughts over this fight? Is this a legitimate fight? Good fight?
Yeah, it's a legitimate fight. It's not the opponent most people want for Canelo. Most people want Canelo to be fighting the David Benavidez's of the world. William Skull, legit challenger, 23-0, not been defeated yet. But respectfully, we've seen Canelo beat Jaime Munguia. We've seen him beat Edgar Berlanga in his last fight. So it feels a little bit like it's... I don't want to be so negative about it, but it feels a little bit like it's Canelo, making a move. I know that Skull is mandatory. I think it's the IBF. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys watching and listening. He's mandatory for one of the titles that Canelo holds, and that's partly why this fight is actually happening. Do I think that Canelo's going to beat him? Yeah, I think so. Unless William Skull, I can see it on the screen now, IBF super middleweight champion. Yeah, so I think he's mandatory for maybe the IBF, and that's why the fight's taking place. Canelo doesn't want to vacate, so he's defending it and probably defending the other titles as well as a result of it. So it's a legit fight, Santiago, and to the audience. But it's not what everybody wants to see. Everybody wants to see Canelo fighting the likes of David Benavidez. Obviously, there's huge talk of him fighting Terence Crawford in September. Canelo versus Crawford, a super fight. That's probably the fight that I reckon we're all kind of lined up for this year. That's more likely to take place than it ever has. And I think that would be a super fight. I think it'd be on, in terms of its promotion, in terms of the level that both of these guys have been at over the past few years. I'd probably compare it to something like a Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler, a fighter that's moving up through the weight to fight a guy who's legit in that particular weight, and quite the king in that weight. So it'd be kind of like that, but it'll be a really interesting and compelling affair.
Yeah. It's funny because it feels like he's pulling like the Mayweather strategy, trying to avoid like the big fights, and then they fight Pacquiao at the end of the career, which people would say, oh, that's a little, too little, too late. situation. Um, Besides that, Sean, anything else in your world that we should be aware of? Any big matches this year that we should be aware of besides the Canelo versus Skull matchup?
I think the one that'll be of most interest to people coming up, the 26th of April, Tottenham Hotspur's football stadium, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. And, you know, the battle of the sons is finally upon us. And it's a fight that I'm a couple of years ago when it first got made and it was due to happen in October 2022. I was legit looking forward to it. I wasn't so keen on the fact that there was a weight disparity between them. I'm still not so keen on that fact. I hope that, you know, things play out in the right favor in terms of how that's playing out. But the level of entertainment, the level of controversy it's bringing, you know, Chris Eubank being fined £100,000, which is what, about $140,000 for slapping Conor Benn in the face with an egg at the presser a couple of weeks ago. Which, yeah,
No prime bottle.
it's no prime bottle for this one. An egg. There is a significance behind the egg as well for anybody that's followed that story and why that's significant. But it's a fight to look forward to. I'd say that's one that if you are tuning in terms of big fights, it's definitely one coming up in the UK that's worth watching. And other news: Santiago, Dana White entering the world of boxing. Like, how is that being perceived in America at the moment?
You know something? I heard that news about a couple of weeks ago, I believe, and I didn't hear much. We're not surprised. Typically, these type of guys that do well in one area, they want to do better in the other area. They want to keep growing. Excuse me. And I think he got into the slap thing. That's working out apparently. But I think this is good for the sport. What are your thoughts over that?
Does it bring healthy competition? Yeah, I think it does. Does it? I think it does. I think one of the most significant parts of his proposal is the weight divisions are being reduced. So there's only a certain amount of weight divisions. So there's no bridge divisions like you get super welterweight. You're not going to have the super divisions now. It's just going to be lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, you know, heavyweight, whatever the divisions are that are being proposed. One belt per division. You know, that's something that's been craved for in boxing for a long time. You know, there's going to be one belt per division. I think that's significant. I'd love to see that in boxing. There's always going to be skepticism around it. He says he's going to clean up boxing. That's what he said in a press conference 2 weeks ago. I'm going to clean up boxing. So yeah, good luck. Exactly. You know, we'll see where it goes. I'm apprehensive. The concept sounds great. One belt per division, not as many divisions. People have to fight the best to be the best. It sounds great on paper, but in action, is it going to be a reality? And can he get enough star power to sign up to his organization to box under his organization? We'll see.
We'll see what happens. Another rumor: Jake Paul to fight Anthony Joshua. Is that a possibility?
It's funny. It's a funny piece of news, actually. Like, you know, he's basically called him out on the podcast, hasn't he? And said he'd beat him. And I won't repeat some of the expletives that he used, but he told everybody he was going to beat him. And then Anthony Joshua replied, "See you in 2026" or something along them lines. And then there was a screenshot of a phone call to Jake Paul. So obviously a conversation has been had. Will it happen? Nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises me. So Anthony Joshua at this stage of his career, though, Santiago, Anthony Joshua, I genuinely think he's on the decline in his career. I think he's coming to the end of his career. If he could get a huge payday against Jake Paul in 2026, is he going to take it? Yeah, of course he is. Absolutely.
His retirement
100%.
check.
Yeah, exactly. Why? I'm not being funny, but if someone proposed that to you, like with limited boxing experience, would you take $300,000-$500,000 to get in the ring with Jake Paul?
Mike Tyson did it.
Well, there you go. Well, was it 20 million or something like that? He got paid for that ridiculous amount of money. So yeah, it's a possibility. Nothing surprising anymore, is it? With the way things are and the way Netflix particularly are investing into boxing and a lot of other sports in general, they're throwing a lot of money at sports in general at the moment. It's an absolute possibility that they will push for that fight. However, I've also read and heard from multiple sources that Netflix are really heavily invested in making the Tyson Fury Anthony Joshua fight this year. So let's see. I know he said he's retired, but for a hell of a lot of money, I'm sure he'll get out of those silk pajamas for that money.
Yeah, which I want to talk to you about Fury. Tyson Fury obviously lost against Usyk twice. What are your thoughts over that? Is that like a bad ending? Do you think he wants to come back and do the little Netflix matches? What do you think about Fury's state of life right now?
Fury can contradict a lot of things that he says. He'll say he's retired, and then if someone offers him the right money, he will come back. He's done it multiple times. If you really dig into his career, I think it's about 5 or 6 times where he said, you know what, I'm retiring. Then all of a sudden, an offer gets put on the table, an offer that's too good to refuse for Team Fury, and they take it. If Netflix are trying to heavily get a big fight like this, a legitimate fight like this onto their streaming platform, and they've got the money to do it, which they have, then absolutely, it's a strong possibility that it either happens later this year or early next year. I'm totally convinced that it's going to happen. Not that I want it to happen, because I just think there's nothing for either man to prove at this point. But I know there's a lot of people in Britain, particularly, that want to see that fight. They want to see who is the better man between the two of them. But from my perspective, I just think we'll never truly know now, because I don't think they are no longer in the prime of their boxing careers. So how are you ever going to know who was the better fighter? It's like you said before, Mayweather Pacquiao. Like, we're never truly going to know if Manny Pacquiao could have beat Floyd Mayweather when he was at his absolute best. We're never going to know that now. So I think it's the same with this. Even if it happens, there's always going to be people saying, oh, well, it should have happened 5, 6 years before. So there's always going to be that skepticism. Skepticism's going to be around it 100%. Will I watch it? Of course I'll watch it. Absolutely. I'm going to watch it. If anything, it'll make it a more exciting fight, because they are no longer the fighters they once were. So, lack of defense, maybe, lack of movement like they once had. There's going to be flaws in both their games now that are going to be quite evident. And I think it'll make probably for a more exciting fight.
Exactly. Interesting, that you said a couple fights ago, Eubank versus Penn will be in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. First time is usually in Wembley or at Manchester, but interesting place to have a fight.
Yeah, I'm not so sure of the decision-making process behind why it's happening there. The fight itself, it's on paper, it's great. The undercard is pretty weak. I don't know what other people's thoughts are on that. For me, it's a pretty weak undercard. I think the fight of this sort of magnitude should really have a really solid undercard, or it should be it should be like chief support to a bigger fight. Like, it is a big fight for UK fight fans, but if they wanted bigger audiences out of it, I think maybe they could have done it on an undercard of a bigger fight. But that's, again, it's only my opinion. People might really be happy with what's happening. They might really be happy with the card. That's all my own personal preference and how I feel about it. So I'm going to watch it. I'm looking forward to seeing, whether Eubank Jr. can shut Ben up, or whether likewise Ben can break down and beat Eubank Jr.
Wow. Well, there you have it. A lot going on this year for 2025. It's only March, Sean, but we have a lot in store. Sean, anything else before we go? And what is the best way to reach you and also to listen to your podcast?
BTR Boxing Podcast Network. All you've got to do is Google that these days, and literally every other show comes up. We've got the Legendary Night Show, Career Profiles, The Darker Side of Boxing. We've got some great content that's been there. It's been out for a couple of years. Career Profiles is the one that I'm currently working on at the moment. I've just released an episode on Chris Eubank Sr., just doing his career profile at the moment. So, if anybody's interested in listening to the father of Chris Eubank Jr., or is a big fan of Chris Eubank Sr., that's probably the place to go and listen to one of the most recent episodes that I've done in terms of our story-based elements. But yeah, you can type in any of those in Google. You'll find us there. You'll also find me on social media. I'm mainly on Facebook these days. If you do want to reach out to me, BTR Facebook page. Yep, he's there. Post loads of stuff out on there, loads of different historical posts, loads of different things going on there. So if you want to support on there and get involved in conversations, more than welcome to do so. And it's a pleasure as always, Santiago. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Sean's not afraid of debate. So if you wanted to debate if George Foreman was the greatest boxer of all time, you can do that. You can also do it at thesportscast.net or the Sportscast1 on X and Instagram. We'll be live tweeting throughout the week. We got March Madness in college basketball, and the FA Cup quarterfinals are this weekend. I know Sean doesn't watch soccer much, but I'm sure you're aware of it. You're aware of the streets, and we got a lot going on in sport, football, heating up, NFL, and a lot going on in the world of sport. But Sean, before we go, what's one UK food item that the Americans have to eat? It's like, man, you gotta try this. This is the UK.
Oh wow. I'm trying to think of something like the stereotypical
Pies.
things that yeah, you guys know of fish and chips, pies. Right, let me think of something really obscure. Like, it's a really difficult one, this, because there's so many foods out there that you could go and try. Like, I see videos, Lad Bible do a lot of videos of like American actors coming over to the UK and like testing out like Greg's pasties in the UK, like all the pastries Greg's do. They're quite funny. Like pastries that we do in Greg's, probably. That's definitely a place to try. I don't know if they have do they have Nando's in the US? Is Nando's a
Nando's
thing?
they don't. I know it's huge over there.
Yeah, Nando's is probably like a go-to place for a lot of people. Wagamama's is another place that people really like to try in the UK. Even though it's not UK cuisine, it's certainly like a mainstay for people like to go to. Indian food, huge over here. A lot of curry houses, takeaways, buffets. I mean, I know it's a lot more than one, but these are the types of things that people like really dine out on over here.
How often do you eat the full English breakfast?
Oh, I I cook a healthy version of a full English breakfast, probably
It's already healthy
twice
already.
a week. Yeah, well, it can be. It depends on the type of sausages you buy, and like you can buy like really like low fat sausages. As in Heck,
Right.
there's a brand called Heck in the UK. You can get Heck sausages. They're really low chicken sausages. I like to make them. Depends on how you make it as to how healthy it is. If you make it in a load of oil, and you make it with like really oily like toast and stuff like that, it's not the
That's
greatest
not
in the
good.
world. If you make it quite light, yeah, it's good. It's good. I could eat it every day.
One food I cannot try find here is sausage. I don't think I can never have pounded, but it's part of the full English breakfast. But you guys probably get it as easy over there.
Do you mean black pudding? I think that's what they call
Black
it.
pudding, yes. My bad, black pudding. It tastes like a sausage to me, but
Yeah, it's not for me. Yeah, definitely not for me. I'm not a fussy eater, but that is one thing I don't eat. That and mince pies and Christmas pudding. No, it's a no-go for me.
well, there you have it. George Foreman, remember him. Look at other sports news, and of course, English breakfast, English food. Sean, I really appreciate you coming on to the Sportscast.
Pleasure as always.
And this was your update.